we thought it most appropriate to actually start by talking about Bernie's new approach on Build Back Better. So he went on CNN, and the money quote here, I could play the clip, but the clip is basically more of the same from what you've heard from him about, most American people believe we should lower the cost of prescription drugs. It's the same stump speech, so we don't have to play it since we are going to play a couple other clips later in the show.
One thing the people who work with him never have to worry about is keeping him on message.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's one thing they never have to deal with.
So what Bernie basically said was that it's a shame that the Republicans are laughing all the way to Election Day. That was the big quote that he offered up. And he said they're laughing all the way to Election Day because they have not had to take a difficult vote against all of the popular programs that are part of the Build Back Better package. And so now what he is suggesting is that Democrats bring these individual policies up for a vote one by one. For example, you could put universal pre-K in its own vote, Medicare expansion in its own vote. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. I mean, at this point, I think you may as well do it because you really have nothing to lose.
Why not?
So, I mean, why the hell
well,
not?
They should have done it from the beginning.
Well, that may have been a better approach. But the thing is, I think the reason they didn't do a sort of a la carte one by one approach at the beginning is the same reason why they didn't want to decouple the Build Back Better Act with the bipartisan infrastructure deal, because they didn't want to give Joe Manchin a win on universal pre-K so he could take that and go home and then ditch all the others, right? They wanted to force a package deal, which was the whole point of doing both the bipartisan plan and Build Back Better at once.
I mean, to be fair, according to what they're saying, Manchin basically jerked him around for months. Oh yeah, no, I'm for that. Yeah, I'll go along with that. Yeah, sure.
Well, this is the interesting thing, is that Manchin has declared publicly in the very recent past, his support for universal pre-K. And so you could say, okay, here's universal pre-K by itself. Vote for it. Now, the thing about Bernie's messaging on the CNN show with the Republicans are laughing all the way to the bank because they're not having to vote against any of this stuff. Yes and no. I mean, look, do I think that there is a large swath of Republican voters who are like under the illusion that, say, Rand Paul supports universal pre-K and are going to be shocked and horrified to learn that he doesn't and vote for Charles Booker in that race because of it? No. On the other hand, I do think giving someone a program like that, passing a big program like that, gives you the opportunity to cut a nice little 30-second ad and run it against the Republican who voted against it. Okay, maybe. But the reason I don't quite buy this is because the Republicans are not in a position to actually block any of this from becoming law. And so it's going to be very difficult to actually use it as a weapon against Republicans. What Bernie's doing there is doing what he has felt a need to do his entire career, which is prove to the Democrats that he's a good soldier and that he's really doing this to attack Republicans rather than force the hand of Democrats within his party.
I mean, I saw him on Chuck Todd, and he did repeatedly talk about Manchin.
So, he went after Manchin in cinema. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He didn't pretend that there's no problem.
No. And he hasn't been pretending. Side. I mean, he screamed at them the other day. He says, why are they wasting all of our time? You know what I mean? So, he ripped into them. Good. I'm not saying he hasn't done that, but I'm saying by framing it in terms of, well, we're giving Republicans a pass by not doing this. He's pandering to the CNN audience of loyal Democrats. Well, I'm not saying I don't really fault him for it. I'm just saying, like, when I look at it, I don't see the Republican Party as factoring into this at all. This is about unifying the Democratic caucus, period.
Right.
Period.
Right.
If you wanted to make the Republicans an issue, you should have done that months and months and months ago. Why not turn the screws on Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, these so-called moderate Republicans? Why couldn't Susan Collins and Murkowski get on board with suspending the filibuster to do voting rights? I mean, they're from Maine and Alaska. There's no black vote to suppress in those states. So
what
difference does it make to them? They'll get away with it just fine.
I just don't know how much you can really turn the screws on Republicans.
No, I mean, I don't think you
All,
really
all
could, but
Republicans have to say is transgender lesbian nuns waving critical race theory treatises are coming to take over your schools.
but what I'm saying is if you wanted to frame this as an attack on the party, then why not include them with Manchin and Cinema? Because obviously, the way it turned out, you wouldn't have any worse luck getting Murkowski's vote than you would Kirsten Sinema's vote.
Sure,
So if you
sure.
wanted to point to, how incorrigible the Republican Party is, you may as well have included them earlier. I don't really know what the political payoff will be to targeting them in that way now. I guess if you're on CNN and, you want to convince these mainstream Democrat viewers that like you have a good idea. I guess a good way to do that is to mention that you want to stick it to the Republicans as hard as you can. I mean, I guess. But look, I mean, at this point, I think whatever you can get before the Republicans take over, maybe try and get. So yeah, put universal pre-K up for a vote, for a standalone vote. And
Well, this
because
is the tragedy. Anybody who was paying any kind of attention knew that basically we had 2 years to do everything the Democrats were going to ever do again for the next generation.
right.
And we really didn't do anything. So there's nothing permanent, really. I mean, what permanent changes have they made? Yeah, you had a relief bill, all of whose provisions were temporary. You have the infrastructure package, I guess.
Rural broadband. I mean, rural broadband is something, as someone who would like to one day like move to the mountains of Vermont, New Hampshire, or Maine. The one hang up I have is that it would be tough to do this from those areas because I know from working in Vermont a few weeks out of the year, everything about it is lovely except the internet. The internet sucks.
Right.
So, rural broadband. Hey, that's
where you should set all your horror movies.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's not a bad idea. But I mean, so, look, I mean, that was one of the good things in that bipartisan infrastructure deal. Is rural broadband enough to run a national campaign on? No, not in these times, but I mean, that's about it. I mean, that is about it. That's about what they have accomplished.
It's a thin reed to hang the political future of the country.
Yeah, I would say so. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for Bernie, this is a tragedy for a nation. It's a tragedy for all of us who really have tried to fight the good fight over the last several years, some people for several decades, like Bernie. I feel like that he's just too set on, I'm going to, Mr. Smith goes to Washington and I'm going to make all this work, like but I don't know, man. I mean, in the middle of the night, does he turn to Jane and say, I wasted my life. I should have been in a band.
Yeah,
what
right.
was I thinking?
Wasn't he in
For
some
this? I could have just kept smoking pot like a Meshuggah up in the woods. What did I have to come down and get involved in this politics for? I was very happy. I used to fix the occasional cabin, for $50.
Yeah. I mean, Kyle Kalinske did a little video that I thought was actually quite good. Where he just said, I don't know if he was quoting Marianne Williamson or something like that, or paraphrasing her, that said that, the fight itself is an end. It is fulfilling to just know that you did everything you could, and it's fulfilling to do everything you can when you can, whether it succeeds or not. Chris Hedges says, I don't fight fascists because I think I'm gonna win. I fight fascists because they're fascists, and that's it.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe wherever you saw it, on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Facebook. We have channels on all three of those platforms. Also, consider helping us create more content by becoming a member at patreon.com/do-dissidents, or on Facebook, where you can become a supporter right through our Facebook page and get bonus content every week, as well as call-in access to our live stream shows. Thank you very much for your continued support.